Well, hey, we are so excited to be here today to talk about some issues around our financial life. And at Canyon Ridge, we're always trying to come up with great ways to deliver helpful resources to everybody, especially around issues that matter to us and that we run into every day. And so today, I get to spend some time talking with Shona Erickson, who has been around our church for a long time. And Shona is a licensed marriage and family therapist and has done such great work with many of the people of our church, providing counseling services for them. And we thought this was a really interesting topic, Shona, around money, because typically when you think about financial advice, you're thinking about financial experts, economists, people like that. But we know one of the most difficult things to do around money is to have conversations with others, especially our spouses or roommates or people in our life that matter to us around money. So thanks for being with us as we have this conversation today. I think it's going to be great.
You are so welcome. Happy to help.
Yeah. Now, Shona, give a little bit of your history with Canyon Ridge, and especially how you have kind of leaned in with our counseling work here at Canyon Ridge.
So I've been a part of Canyon Ridge since the beginning. I tell people I came over on the boat from Central and have been a part in some way with recovery ministry since the beginning. And then about 15 years ago was a part of a team that helped start the counseling ministry, coaching ministry that we have now, and have been a part of that ever since.
Yeah. And you've been instrumental in helping us get our biblical care coaches up and running, and still are part of helping us shape that and provide that kind of service for folks. And today we really want to lean in, especially though, and talk about finances. And I know you've probably had a lot of experience talking with people about not just their things going on in their personal life, but especially how their finances have affected, maybe issues around money has affected them, either people themselves or their relationships. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you have seen money and finances affect people in their lives and in their relationships.
Mm-hmm. So obviously this is a really difficult topic for people to talk about. And one of the things that we see is that it creates this dance that people often do because there's so many issues around money, that it brings up this reaction that people have. And then when they react, the other person reacts to their reaction. And then we have this cycle of reactions that's kind of like spinning a spinning tire in the mud, that they don't go anywhere. And this react cycle can go on for days, months, years. And in that react cycle, there's a lot of hurt that happens and a dip that happens in the relationship. People become emotionally, physically, spiritually distant from each other. Hurt that happens and develops, and then this reactivity towards the other person. So that then there's this withdrawal, that they don't talk about the things that need to be talked about. And a reactivity that happens across the board, not just related to finances, but a short fuse with each other in general.
Yeah.
Because of that cycle.
Yeah. And we've often heard, how money is the number one issue that tends to break up marriages, break up relationships. Why is it money that is the difficult topic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say it's not money per se. It's the stuff. How's that for a clinical word? It's the stuff around money that creates the challenges.
Yeah.
And so, for example, one of those being, we have a social taboo about talking about money, right? It's not we don't usually talk about that. Like, you don't come into your small group, your life group, and say, so what's in your 401k? We just don't talk about that. We have other issues as well that keep us from talking well about finances, like some practical hurdles. Like many of us were not raised in families where we were taught some of the basic skills of budgeting or how to balance your checkbook, let alone figuring out a retirement kind of plan. I think there are also like some personality differences that can get in the way. We might have one person that's a spender, one that's a saver, one that's a risk taker, one that's risk averse. And expectations around how money should be handled, and differences depending on how they were raised. But probably the two biggest factors that I see that get in the way for people are fear and shame. And some significant issues with fear. Most of us have some concerns about our finances, especially right now with the times that we're living in, right? But healthy fear will lead us to be able to make some choices, to take some action to help with that. Unhealthy fear could keep us immobilized, tells us scary stories, and then we're afraid to even take any steps because we're afraid of making a wrong decision, so we do nothing. And shame, as you know, is different than guilt. Guilt is about my behavior. Shame is about my being. So guilt, if I make a bad financial decision, would say, okay, what can I learn from that? What can I do differently next time? How can I adjust my behavior? Shame says I'm a horrible, awful person, did something wrong. I am something wrong, can never do this right. And shame always necessitates a cover up. So I have to wear some kind of a mask because I don't want you to see how I really am. Because my fear is if you see that, then I'll be hurt, rejected, abandoned. And when I'm coming from a place of fear or shame, not likely to reach out and ask for the help that I need, to say, hey, how do I do a budget? What do you do with this? And so it perpetuates the fear and the shame and staying stuck in that cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I think we've noticed, from my end of things as a pastor in talking with people about money is oftentimes it seems like people are so much of their security is wrapped up in how much money I have and do I have the right kind of money that
That's
it
right.
becomes this very sensitive issue. Have you seen that too in the work that you've done with people?
Absolutely. And that's part of that reaction cycle. If I have that shame that say I'm only worthwhile if I have, blank, this much or this much in retirement or this much stuff. And yes, and then I get very reactive to that because it pushes that button of feeling worthless or not good enough.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the best way to have conversations then around this very touchy issue. What would you suggest is a great way to start a conversation for somebody who may be a little bit afraid to dive into this with someone they care about?
Yep, that's a great question. And so there may be some conversations that need to happen before we get to the financial conversation. So let's say having financial conversations is the start line. I may be back here, and back here, just being able to say, hey, I'm afraid. I have some real challenges in talking about this issue. Here are the fears that come up for me. So being able to just say that will help take away some of that fear, and being able to ask for what you need. Hey, I just need to be reminded that my worth isn't in how much money we make or how much we have in savings. I just need you to remind me that you're with me and we're going to figure this out together. And then I would also say back here to begin to pray and ask God, what are my challenges with issues? What are my narratives and buttons? And trying to get some clarity around that. And then when you do, begin to speak truth back to that of what God says and who God says you are in that. And then when we get to that start line, when we can begin to start having conversations about financial stuff, I would say, first of all, let's pray. Let's invite God into that process. And let's keep it small. Start with very goals. We'll have a goal in mind and take baby steps towards beginning that goal. So let's say our goal is we're going to begin to develop a budget. So in that first meeting, we're not going to develop a financial plan for the next 5 years. Be in that first meeting, we just talk about what's our income and what's our expenses. And then we celebrate that we were able to do that. And then to also be able to talk about what you need from each other if it becomes overwhelming or if it starts to go south. Hey, I'm going to need you to remind me of this, or maybe we take a break for a few minutes and come back to it. And we do this a little bit at a time.
Wow.
So I would say start small, celebrate the victories along the way, and have grace, patience, and compassion for yourself and with each other, because this is hard.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if people get to a place where they maybe get stuck around a particular issue, what are some strategies they can use when they find themselves kind of getting maybe caught in one of those reactive cycles like you're talking about, or getting stuck in a conversation? What could be helpful to them in that moment?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. So the best thing when you're stuck in a cycle like that is to take a time out and to be able to go pray and breathe, and to be able to try to identify what was the button that got pushed that I just reacted to. Is it I'm feeling worthless or like a failure because I've lost my job and now I don't know how to provide for my family, and something we were just talking about triggered that? So to be able to identify that and then come back and be able to tell the other person, hey, sorry about that. Here's what was going on that I just reacted to, and then try to finish the conversation from there.
Yeah, for sure. Um, let's talk a little bit about denial in this whole
Mhm.
this whole issue around finances. A lot of times, I find myself and others really quick to kind of push financial realities aside until they become really big problems, and then I have to deal with them, and maybe not in the best way. How would somebody tackle their own denial uh, in the midst of dealing with financial issues, especially with another person who may be trying to raise the flag and say, hey, we got to deal with this, and you don't really want to, or maybe the other way around? How do people navigate that?
hmm Good question. And so denial is one of those defense mechanisms that helps protect us from our fears. And so there's some fears going on. So being able to address the fears underneath that may help them to be able to get past that denial. And again, taking it small steps and providing that support and encouragement um, can help in those moments as well.
Yeah. Um, so say a couple really wants to get on the same page here. I mean, they're committed to getting themselves on the same page, maybe around issues of, say, debt-free living, or a spending plan, or how much needs to be set aside for retirement, or even what level of retirement they would take. What would you say to some couples who say we have tried this before, we have failed at this, we haven't really been able to have these conversations, but we really do want to get on the same page? How would they begin that process again towards that?
hmm So this is one of those areas where sometimes a coach or a counselor can be a great help and
Mm,
resource in that. Also, like we were talking about a minute ago, to be able to talk about the buttons that are getting pushed, the narratives that are keeping them from being able to talk about what it is they need to get on the same page. And starting there and saying, okay, yes, we both agree we want to do a budget, but maybe we have some differences of opinion of what should be in that. Having that conversation about, okay, so what do you need to be able to join me in this conversation, and then working towards what we call a win-win. So it might be,
mm.
here's the categories that I think need to be on the budget, but here's the categories I think. And then figuring out, hey, what's the win-win in that? Well, I could do this, but I can't do that. So there's a negotiation process that begins to happen, and just being willing to enter into that. And sometimes no matter what you do and all the best work that you do, it's still going to be scary. And then it's just a matter of being willing to do it afraid.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. I'm going to throw this question at you, because and there may not be a great answer for this, but let's say, as you have done that, as you have worked with another person, and you say, man, I think we're not getting anywhere. How much giving in do you do to say, I may not agree, but I'm going to give in for the sake of the relationship? Where would that play a role in coming together around common ground in the area of finances?
Yeah, I don't think there is a great answer to that one. I think sometimes there is a give and take in
Yeah.
relationships in general, especially in figuring out finances and budget. And so figuring out what your bottom line is in that. Maybe I am willing to give some, but there's a line beyond which I'm not willing to give. And then if the other person is willing to meet me there, that might be a great time to seek out some additional coaching or counseling.
Well, Shona, thank you so much for being with us and for sharing your expertise around relationships, and especially in this area of finances. We know that money issues are one of the key stresses that cause so much trouble in relationships. And let's say there's a couple out there that says, man, we do need some help. We're at that point where we need someone to come alongside us, and maybe they want to reach out to you. How would they contact you to get this kind of help?
I would be happy to help. They can call me at 702-220-7386, or email me at Shonna, SHONNA 222 at cox.net. And I just want to leave people with a word of encouragement to have that grace and compassion with themselves. This is a challenging area. And remember that you're not alone in this. There is help. There are resources. God is with you. And He wants His best for you. And His best is not to stay in bondage to the fear and the shame and the narratives. So know that you're not alone and that there is help.
Great. That is such a great word, Shona. And thanks again for being with us. As always, you can reach out for resources at canyonridge.org. And we've got some great resources that can help you in this area that Shona has helped us put together through our biblical care coaches, and also in some other referrals and seeking in ways to find referrals and seeking professional counseling if that's what you need. So reach out for those resources where you need them. And as always, be looking for more coming to you from Canyon Ridge Christian Church as we try to offer great resources to help you in your life, to help you thrive and not just survive. Hope this has been helpful to you, and we'll get to talk again soon.